Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Monday Monday the 3rd of April. I was sick last week and I lost the rest of March. Um, okay, so a lot happened last week and you have to know, I have to talk about this. An indictment. Sorry. I I was I was coming home from a session. I was sick as a dog. I signed up and paid for a course, so I wasn't going to miss it last Thursday and Friday. I was coming home Thursday, and I'm driving home, and I just about drove off the road. I was laughing so hard because all day I had missed all the fun and heard on the news that a former leader of the free world had been indicted in New York on several counts of something. And just listening to the pundits and the talk about the one particular political body in the south of the border, all in unison getting up and berating this because how dare they do this, indict a former president and someone who's running for election, and this is wrong. And I know I'm Canadian and it's none of my business, but the fact is that I think I would feel the same way if this was happening to a Canadian politician, former prime minister or something, or a prime minister wannabe, somebody who's running for the position. I'm a big believer in accountability and equal rights. If you have the right to to run for election, to run for a position and hold office, or you've had the right to do so and have done so in the past, then your rights are no greater than the rights of any other single citizen in your country, which means you don't have the right to be above the law. As a matter of fact, you should be the very person that people look to see um, what the standard is. And if you can't live up to that standard, or if you betray that standard, then you, in my mind, you haven't earned the right. You haven't earned the right, nor are you capable of holding the responsibility of fulfilling that most important piece of role of life. I think we name the president of the United States the leader of the free world, the most important and powerful person in the world. Okay, I'd like to argue with that, and that seems so presumptuous. And there's many reasons why I would think that maybe it's not true. However, let's go with it for a minute and let's talk about what that means. If you are the most powerful person in the world, or even just in the free world, then that automatically puts you under the microscope. It has to, because you have to be the most upstanding person. You have to be making decisions that are for the betterment and the good of every single person for whom you hold over whom you hold power. And in the giving of that title, even if it's just self-given, that you are the leader of the whole free world, or the most powerful person in the world, then you have just sort of subsumed a whole lot of citizens as your own. Your responsibility isn't just to those who voted for you, or who participated in the election that elected you, but you are now holding responsibility over nations that depend upon you, whether or not we agree that we depend upon you, or that you agree that you have that relationship with us. If you are going to hold on to and put yourself forward as being the leader of the world, then you now have that responsibility. And I'm really struggling with this concept that that person who has that responsibility is the very person who shouldn't be indicted for doing the very things that the average Joe on the street would be indicted for. Because that's the thing. We're not talking about, okay, so it's hush money, or cooking the books, or whatever it might be that the indictments is for. The point is, those rules are on the books because they're not legal. If Mr. Smith, who runs, say, in Canada, we don't have private banks, but if Mr. Smith, who ran a local or a regional bank, decided to have some fun with someone in an extramarital situation, didn't want his wife or his his employees, or his the people that his shareholders to know about it, decided that he wanted to figure out a way to make sure that that person with whom he had his indiscretion kept their mouth shut. And he also wanted to run for office, and hence was using, you know, allegedly using illegal means to cover that money up and make it look like campaign contributions or however all these alleged things are happening, um, we would fully expect that our local district attorney or our crown attorney in Canada or whoever that might be would go after them and say, no, you're not allowed to do that. It's illegal. We wouldn't let we wouldn't let our local school principal do it, and we wouldn't allow our mayor to do it. Why would we allow you to do it? Just because you have a higher level of money, socioeconomic status, holding a higher level of power. Those rules are meant to be rules for everybody. Like, it seems silly, but we have rules. Like, we don't run stoplights. We don't drive across a railroad track when the lights are flashing. And why is that? Well, because it's dangerous. There's a reason that that rule is in place. If we just let people decide, well, I'm above the law and I can do that, well, then what happens with, for instance, say you've got, you know, say it's the big city mayor's son driving his big SUV, and he's sick of waiting for the train to come, so he decides to drive across the tracks. Well, it's his own fault if he gets caught in that and he gets killed. Well, what if he's got his girlfriend in the car with him, or his best friend, or half the football team? Was it okay then? What about those families who have lost somebody? He broke the law. He's paying the consequences because he's been killed or he's paralyzed or he's, whatever. But if he's alive, he should be charged because he did something illegal. And on top of that, there were other consequences for other people. Whether they were intended consequences or not, he should still be held liable for what he did. Why do we believe that a certain person who served in office, whether we agree about how well he did or not, but because he held that most important position in the whole wide world, because he did that, or because he figures that he should try to do it again, why should that be the reason why he doesn't get held to the very laws he's called to then uphold? That makes no sense to me. Accountability cannot work if some people are not held accountable. It's just dumbfounds me that there are people who are actually making arguments that he should not be indicted, that he may even legally can't be indicted. Why not? Why not? Regardless, Republican, Democrat, conservative, NDP, liberal, whatever. If you are a human being who is a citizen within a country and you break that country's laws, then you need to be held accountable. Period. If you are someone, especially in my mind, yes, everybody needs to be held accountable. And there is no way, shape, or form that money, position, power should be able to buy you out of that. Because what does that start to look like if I can't be held accountable because I'm the president, and then the vice president doesn't have to be held accountable, and then maybe the senators and Congress people, and then, well, what about trickle down? Oh no, but you can be held accountable if you can't pay for things, that you can't make a hefty donation to a campaign, or you can't, pay for 1 million lawyers who can make all kinds of arguments that just make a jury's head spin. That's not right. That isn't right. At the end of the day, we are all human beings. We all have to live. We have the same rules so that we can all live relatively healthy lives. Most laws are in place not to be penalizing anyone, but to ensure that people aren't penalized by the nature of how those laws will be broken. Laws are not made to be a problem. They are made to make a level playing field, and they're made to establish boundaries within which we stay safe. And that is so very important. How is it that we can look at things and say, some people should not be held accountable because they are just too important? I'm sorry, but in my mind, those are the very people who should be held accountable. Because if they're held accountable, then all us peons down here need to pay attention and say, well, if he can be held accountable, so can I. So I better keep my P's and Q's in orders. I don't care about how you feel about Trump. It isn't who the person is. It isn't the name. It isn't how much money they have. That's really, in my mind, the problem. Right here, the problem is that we are dabbling in a world that is becoming so authoritarian, so one person in charge, so very much like what we saw in the 30s, in the 1900s, in the 20th century, that we are becoming a world that is quickly means that one person gets to call all the shots. And that isn't how things are meant to work in the States or in Canada. We have systems, they're very different, but we have systems set up in place to ensure that one person can't call all the shots. And yet it's looking an awful lot like that's where we're going. It isn't just about an indictment. It's actually an indictment of one person. It's actually more about an indictment of a society and where we're going. And when it comes right down to it, I think for the vast majority of people in North America, all three countries, remember North America includes Mexico, in all three countries, I think the vast majority of citizens would say, you know what? I don't want to live in a state where one person or one particular group of people who make, have this many zeros after the one first digit in their paycheck get to make all the decisions. That's not right. It should be as fair and equity based as possible. And if we determine that one person, because he may become the president, is not accountable, does not have to be held accountable, then we haven't just started down a slippery slope. We're picking up speed and we're heading for a hard crash at the bottom. So, kudos to the district attorney in New York for going forward and doing what he believed to be the right thing. What is, I think, is a shame is that it took something as simple and so seemingly insignificant as hush money to be the thing that he was indicted on, when there are such more significant and bigger things that he should be and hopefully will be indicted on. Good on that DA for making a decision and sticking with it. May we all start to recognize that no one person can ever or should ever be above the law of all the people. Have a great day. God bless you, and I will see you again tomorrow for Tuesday's Church at Home with Rachael.